Hello everyone, today we are going to discuss the distributive property, and this is probably something you've seen before. So what the distributive property is just a property that allows us to rewrite the product, which product means multiplication, of a number, which could be written as a variable, and a sum or difference. Again, sum is addition, difference is subtraction. So basically what the distributive property says, if I have something, some number or variable, times some sum or product in a parentheses, right? In this case, it's a sum. Whatever is on the outside of that parentheses, right? And we're multiplying here. It says I have to take A times B and I have to take A times C. I have to distribute that multiplication of that term on the outside of the parentheses to everything on the inside. So I have A times B plus A times C. So if we just do a couple examples here, again, I take what's on the outside of the parentheses, and I know that I have to distribute it to everything on the inside. So what I like to do is I like to draw arrows. So I am reminded what I have to multiply together. So I have to take 3 times x, and it's plus, I have to take 3 times 8. Well, I can simplify here. 3 times x is just 3x, or you could leave it as 3 times x, but this is a little bit simpler. Plus, well, what's 3 times 8? Well, 24. There's my final answer. We'll talk about how we know if we can combine terms in our next lesson, but for right now, we're just going to leave it just like this. Looking at the next one, same idea. The only difference is now the number that we're distributing in is on the tail end of the parentheses. And notice that the -7 is also in parentheses. The reason being is if we just wrote it like this, by b minus 4 in parentheses times a -7, that actually isn't times a -7, it looks like -7. That's why they put it in parentheses. So anyways, still the same process. I'm going to take what's on the outside, just my single term, and I'm going to multiply by each term in the parentheses. And notice here I have a difference. So I have to take -7 times 5b. Notice here it's subtraction, right? It's a difference. So I have minus -7 times 4. So I go ahead, simplify. -7 times 5 is a -35b. Here I have minus a negative, so we talked about this a couple lessons ago, so that becomes a plus. So I get plus 7 times 4, which is 28. There's my final answer. That is how you do the distributive property. All right, why don't you go ahead and try this first one. You're going to enter your answer on Edpuzzle right now. For your answer, you should get 5x, 5 times x, plus 5 times 7, which is 35. Hopefully that's what you got. Let's do this next one together. One last kind of example of ones that look like this. Same process. The only thing that's different here is we do have a fraction to deal with. Don't let fractions scare you. Multiplying with fractions especially is pretty simple. So we're going to first take 12 times 3. This one's subtraction, so I got to put minus. And then 12 times 1/6 t. So if we just simplify the first part first, because that's the easiest part probably, 12 times 3 is 36 minus. In order to multiply, we need both of our terms or both of our numbers here to be fractions. So in order to make 12 a fraction, I'm just going to put it over 1. Because hopefully you agree that 12 divided by 1 or 12 over 1 is the same thing as 12. So I'm not changing anything. When I'm multiplying fractions, they don't have to have a common denominator like I do when I'm adding or subtracting. So multiplication is pretty slick. I just multiply straight across. Well, 12 times 1 is 12 over, well, 1 times 6 is 6, and then I still have the t there. So now I can just simplify. So I get 36 minus, well, 12 divided by 6 is just 2t. So again, don't let fractions scare you. They really aren't that bad. Here's a little example, just seeing what happens when we distribute a -1 in the problem. So sometimes when you see these, I know this is maybe a little bit small, so I'll try to zoom in here. it looks like it's just a negative times something in parentheses. We assume that there's a 1 there. We just don't put that in math notation just because it's less writing to do. But if there's a negative, we can assume it's a -1. So I'm just going to distribute that in to both terms. And notice, if I take a -1 times 2y first, that would just become a -2y. And a -1 times, if we think of this as a -3x, that would become a +3x. So that actually gives me option C. The nice thing about multiplying or distributing in a -1, all you do is you change the positivity or negativity of the term that you're multiplying by, right? And so instead of being a +2y, it becomes a -2y. Instead of being a -3x, it becomes a +3x. So multiplying by -1 is actually pretty slick, and it goes pretty fast. And that is where we are going to end for today. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.